Welcome back. This is session 2 of Economic Review Multiple Choice. Last session we did some released items from the 2016 diploma exam, released items. This time we're looking at the 2014. So if you want to Google Social Studies 30-1 2014 released items, you'll have the same document open that I do. You may want to open it twice so that you can have the questions and the sources on at the same time. And this time, let me say this clearly at the front. Let's get you to attempt. I'll introduce the question. We'll get you to attempt them, or you can attempt them all on your own first. That's great too. And now I'm going to go over the answer. So definitely pause it before I reveal the answer if you haven't figured out the answer for yourself yet. Otherwise, it's not as much of a learning activity. So not all of them will be economic questions for us today, but we definitely can see that this first one is. It's a quote from Adam Smith. It's an excellent quote from Adam Smith. It's a quote that fits into many economic essays. So if you're writing an essay and you're looking for a quote that is easy to remember and it's pro self-interest, it's pro economic individualism, pro capitalism, it's there. And it should be a springboard into a greater conversation about the wealth of the nation and broad-based prosperity, and how that's through individualism that we can actually create more growth and wealth. So typically I would read the question first. In this quotation, Adam Smith suggests that, and I'm going to consider all four answers, people will pursue the common good. Well, I know that common good is a word that's associated with collectivism, not Adam Smith's individualism. There is that argument that the common good will be achieved through the invisible hand, but they're not pursuing the common good. The common good will be achieved as they pursue selfish individualism. So, yeah, you know what? I'm not even sure I'm going to read the source before I cross off A. Self-interest is the basis of all economic activity. Seems pretty obvious that Adam Smith, self-interest. Big business cannot be trusted. Well, they don't want a monopoly. Adam Smith doesn't want a monopoly, but there's still going to be very rarely an anti-big business quote by Adam Smith, who's in favor of capitalism and a free market. Self-interest is not sufficient to maintain a functioning economy. So, with all due apologies to whoever made the question, it's Adam Smith. It's one of our key economists. It's one of the key individuals in our cast of characters. We have a cast of characters. This is an assignment that we have, and you're meant to summarize what each person wants. And really, there's only one of those four things that seems to match up with what should be in your cast of characters for Adam Smith. And because you've made your cast of characters, the answer should be clear. But let's go back. Let's play the game. Let's go back and look at the source and see if we can see the answer. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner. So why does the butcher, the brewer, and the baker provide dinner for us? It's not through their benevolence. It's not that they're kind, good people. They provide dinner for us because of something else. It's Adam Smith, and that something else is the invisible hand, self-interest. That's why the basis of all economic activity. The source is also talking about economic activity. It's talking about brewing. It's talking about butchering. It's talking about it wasn't candlestick making. What was the other thing? Butcher, brewer, baking, brewing, and butchering. Yeah, there's a lot of B's there. But yeah, no, that's self-interest, right? You can match it up because we've done the cast of characters, and we also match it up because we recognize the term self-interest connected to Adam Smith. If only every question was that easy, right? Let's look at number 2. Now, number 2 appears to be a economic source because, it's focused on a grocery store. It is looking at perestroika and glasnost, which come from chapter 5 of the textbook. You may or may not be done chapter 5 at this point, but we're going to look at it anyways because we have talked about communism, and to some extent, you should be ready for it. Number 2, The cartoonist is suggesting that the reforms initiated in the Soviet Union were, at the time, thwarted by an inefficient and stagnant economy. Inefficient. Looking at the picture, do I see inefficiency? If I'm a customer and I'm here and I want to be here, if I got to go all the way around here to get there, is that inefficient? Seems like it. Seems like it. Stagnant. Things aren't growing. So you get all the way there, boop, doop, doop, and there's no meat today. So the economy is not thriving. There's a stagnation. Wow, that does seem to scream, hey, this is the answer. Let's see the other possibilities. Administered by a reformed bureaucratic structure. So these are the reforms. But, I mean, is that the focus of the cartoon? Is it that there's a new reform, or is that it's just inefficient and nothing's happening? Inefficiency and nothing happening seems to be a bigger theme. Intended to slow the inflation. Well, we have no evidence that the economy is inflating or it's overheated. In fact, there's no meat at the thing, so that might be more of a shortage than an inflation, right? It's not that the economy's booming, it's the economy's not really providing what it needs to be. Focused on increasing industry rather than agriculture. Well, we know that there's no meat, and meat is part of agriculture, but there's nothing in the cartoon that suggests that over here there's something that's industrial, that's thriving. So the answer has to be A. Details in the cartoon suggest that political and economic reforms were unpopular with the general population. So I go back to the cartoon and I'm like, do I see people protesting? General people saying, no, this sucks. No, I don't see that. Economic reforms were inextricably tied to political liberalization, both of which failed to meet expectations. So if you're a customer here, when you get to the end of the line, are your expectations met? No. Because you're there to get meat, and you get there and there's no meat. So it fails to meet expectations. Do we have political and economic stuff going on? Well, yes, we do, because perestroika and glasnost are a combination of economic and political reforms. Perestroika was the economic restructuring, and glasnost was the political openness. So we have political and economic reforms here, and we have the idea that when you get to the end, you're going to be disappointed. Sure looks like the answer. Elite members of the Soviet bureaucracy were thwarting governments. Man, they like that question. That word. They have it here, and they have it here. In the same set, they had that word twice. Elite members of the Soviet bureaucracy were thwarting government attempts at genuine reform. Well, we don't see anybody getting in the way, right? We don't see anybody, like, I could draw that. You'd have somebody from the bureaucracy, right? Somebody from the elite moving the signs so that the people become disorientated and the economy is less efficient. But we don't see that. They're not getting in the way of reform because they're not even in the picture. Soviet citizens attempted to embrace liberal ideas, but were limited by government. Again, government's not getting in the way here directly. They're just not really doing it in an efficient way that meets their desires. There's your answer. So I'm going to go with B here, and I'm going to go with, what did I say here? A here, and up here we went with B. So copy those down, see if we get them right in the end. Let's see, can the next one unlock some more economics? Well, I see Great Depression, so we already know we're going to be doing some economic stuff. So I also see that there's 1, 2 sources, and not that I'm a lazy guy or anything, but you know, do I want to read all of this stuff and then look at the questions and then reread all of this stuff? The answer is no. No, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at the questions, and then, because for this one, we only have to look at source 1. This one, we only have to look at source 1. So I don't have to look at source 2 until I get to here, so why confuse myself with too much information? So number 4, reading the question. As outlined in source 1, in determining the rules for relief camps, the Canadian government was hoping to do something. All right, so Canadian government, rules for relief camp. So before I can do well on this question, I've done some studying, right? I've studied the Great Depression. I've studied the lesson that I outlined for you guys, right? I've looked over that one. And in that lesson, it talks about the relief camps, and there's some links there to go on to talk about how the people got dissatisfied and the On to Ottawa trek and all those things. So I paused to think about the context of the source. So as outlined in source 1, in determining the rules for relief camps, the government was hoping to prevent residents from forming organizations that would challenge the authorities. Yeah, because thinking of the context, I know that that's what the workers do, right? So I'm going to go and look at the source and see if that could be it. Prevent residents from forming organizations that would challenge the authorities. I'm going to look at the rules and see if it's a matching game. Multiple choice is very much like a skilled matching game, right? Prevent residents from forming organizations. Is that what's happening here? Workers cannot form a committee, number 7. Okay, seems pretty obvious, right? If you leave the camp for any reason, you cannot return. They spelt cannot wrong. It's one word. Must be single, male, not living at home, at least 18, not a political agitator. So we're trying to limit the possibility of a group of agitators. We're trying to limit the possibility of people leaving the camp and coming back with ideas of groups they should form and different unions, and even in the end, it says workers cannot form a committee. You have to talk to your foreman, who's going to shut things down. I'm going to shut this down. You guys are going to have no work. So, sure looks like that's the answer. But we'll take a look at the other possibilities because, maybe we're underthinking things. Attract residents who would otherwise be among those least able to find employment. So they're trying to, are the rules going to get residents that can't find work elsewhere? I don't see anything about, we want those of you that are lame, or those of you that are sick, or those of you that are unskilled. There's nothing about targeting people like that. So I'm going to say no to that. It would have been a cool goal, though. That would have been nice, the government, to help people can't help themselves. But doesn't fit in with R.B. Bennett, right? We know that these are R.B. Bennett's, and R.B. Bennett's not really, hey, I'm going to go help those who can't find work anywhere else. He's just trying to find single homeless guys that they can pay 20 cents a day and provide 1.3 cents of tobacco a day. That's a very precise number. People that get one set of clothes, some soap, a towel, a bed, a shower, toiletries, a laundry. You get 3 meals a day. You get some free transportation to the camp, but you can't leave. It doesn't really sound like their main goal is to help people that can't help themselves as much as it is to put to work a certain segment of population. Make camp life appealing? Well, if they're trying to make it appealing, you'd be able to leave it, right? I don't see anything about leisure activities and yeah, not being able to, form groups or, have a political opinion. And they're all dudes. Must be single male. They're all dudes. Can't have a family. I think that gets away from some of the appealing nature of it. Ensure that residents develop new skills to make them more employable. Some kind of, apprenticeship program. That'd be cool too. Again, I'm not seeing a big pull there. It's more like we don't want you to form organizations. I mean, it blatantly says that right there. I'm going to stick with A. Number 5. Whew. An individual holding neocon beliefs. So I'm going to pause. You can think, well, what's a neocon? And then I'm going to continue. Would likely view the relief camps. Okay, so neocons, would they like them or dislike them? And why would they like them? So now that I wrestled with 4, I'm pretty familiar with the rules for 5, but I might have to go back. I'm not in a rush. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Approval because rules were in place to maintain control. Is the goal of neocons control? Well, I'm not going to say it's not, but control does seem a little more authoritarian than I would typically put a neocon, even if people are critical of Reagan and Thatcher. Sure, law and order is a part of their mandate, but let's keep looking. Disapproval because the emphasis on self-sufficiency was minimalized. Okay, wait a minute. Neocons. Pennies don't fall from heaven. They have to be earned here on earth. Neocons, self-sufficiency, return back to Adam Smith, self-sufficiency. Yeah, neocons definitely like self-sufficiency. Would self-sufficiency be minimized if you will receive free of charge 1 set of work clothes, soap, towel, bunk bed, 3 meals per day, use of showers, toilets, laundry, we'll provide your tobacco for you, we'll provide you transportation. There's a lot of control here, and what's being lost is self-sufficiency. Now, to distinguish between A and B, is control the goal of neocons, or is it freedom? It certainly is freedom. They want individuals in the marketplace to be free to find their own niche so that government can shrink up. Like, put this on a macro level, neocons don't want the government to do all of these things for the people. This is one camp, but let's say if this was all of Canada or all of America, neocons don't want the government this involved in the lives of the people, because what ends up happening is a culture of dependency. So, yeah, it could be B. Disapproval because the pay awarded to workers would not cover basic needs. We're not sure if it does or it doesn't. Approval because the rights of workers were protected by a limited work week. Neocons kind of have a negative record when it comes to protecting labor. Often unions were, pushed to the side and marginalized so that corporations could make more money. I'm going to go with B on this one. Number 6, information in source 2. So we get to go to a new source now. Suggests that the communists, notice how it's a small c here, unless you're talking about Marxism, which is big M. Sometimes by reading this can help your writing a little bit because you can learn what is a proper noun. Information in source 2, see how source 2 is big like that, suggests that the communist movement in Canada during the Depression enjoyed support only in a few small and isolated communities. I haven't looked at source 2 yet, but I'm picturing that, right? I'm going to picture it. What does that look like? Was encouraged by the actions of charismatic leaders at the national level. Sure makes me... Charismatic Canadian leaders? Has that ever been a thing? Abandoned its support for revolutionary violence as a means of improving the lives of workers. Was largely a product of the desperation felt by many as economic conditions worsened. So we're going to go to the source. We're going to look for these. We might even look for them one at a time, just so that we don't lose something. Enjoyed support only in a few small and isolated communities. So source 2. Whoa, we can get that huge. During the 1930s, many Canadian politicians feared the growing influence of communism in Canada. Prime Minister R.B. Bennett implored all Canadians to put the iron heel of ruthlessness against the threat of communism. Did I see anything yet? Did I see anything that said, you know what, communism's only in a few isolated communities? Seems to me that he thought it was a national threat. Was encouraged by the actions. He didn't say that there's a big guy in charge of Canadian communists. Abandoned its support of violence It didn't say that communists weren't violent. It was largely a product of desperation. It hasn't really said why they're communists either, has it? Growing influence of communism. No. Ironically, some saw Bennett as the reason why so many Canadians were attracted to communism. Now, if Bennett was the communist leader and he was charismatic, then we've got our answer, but Bennett hates the communists. So they're misleading you there. In part because of the government's ineffective policies, by 1933, 1 in every 4 Canadian workers was jobless. And those with jobs were often exploited. I think the answer was in this section, wasn't it? The left-wing mayor of southern Alberta mining town stated that the communists in Canada were made by Bennett. The mayor claimed that in 1929, there were no communists because everyone was prosperous and well-fed. There were no communists because everyone was prosperous and well-fed. But a few years later, the communists' call for working class dignity and equality made their ideas attractive. Come on, people. The answer's clear. Pause. Right? Pause it, because I'm about to tell you. Man, it's got to be D, right? Was largely a product of the desperation felt by many as economic conditions worsened. Right here, the mayor claimed that in 1929 there were no communists because everyone was prosperous. But a few years later, the call for working class dignity and equality made their ideas attractive. They were exploited. The government was inefficient. These are the reasons people were attracted to it. They were jobless. It's got to be that. It's got to be that. It's got to be that. Taken together, now, you also, by practicing these release questions, you can get used to the language of the stems. You know, this is a typical stem that says, okay, now we want you to look at both sources, right? So we're going to use the little phrase taken together. So that's like, look at everything now, taken together. These sources support the generalization that during the Great Depression, the Canadian government hoped to maintain order and preserve the status quo. Well, let's see. Maintain order. We don't want political agitators. We don't want committees. These things might provide some change. We don't like that. Let's get you to put the iron heel of ruthlessness against communism. We don't want some change. R.B. Bennett was the leader of the Conservative Party. I know that because I studied. He's probably going to be resistant to change. We know that he loses the 35 election because he didn't provide enough change. So taking what I see here and what I know, sure seems to be, pause, the right answer. But let's keep looking. Maybe something else will appear. Experimented with a variety of ways. No, it says he's not doing much, right? Adopted a more egalitarian. No, that's not R.B. Bennett. Made scapegoats of individuals holding conflicting ideologies in order to maintain popular support. You know, sure. It sure sounds like that's an okay answer. Thumbs up for a distractor. He loses the 35 election. He did not maintain popular support. That's why it's not D. Had I not known that, you know, I might think it could be D because the whole scapegoating, like communist bad, you know, iron heel against their throat, all that stuff. But knowing a little bit more history tells me that's not the answer. All right, cool. Just going through these. Even though I think that we could probably get a question on the techniques of dictatorship right because of our work with collectivism in RI1, we'll skip that for now. Let's see. These look like they could be words from RI1, so let's take a peek at questions 9 and 10. Which of the following rows identifies terms that appropriately replace the question marks? So we just have to replace these question marks and see what fits in. That seems really fun and easy. How could we go wrong? So, viewpoint A. We favor the status quo. So these are conservatives. Moderate to cautious, traditional, viewpoint A. So what else could we put there? Activist? conservative activist. Conservatives really wanting change, that they go on the streets. No, that doesn't seem right. Interventionist. Well, maybe sometimes. Conventional. Does conventional fit in with things that we don't want things to change? We're going to do things in a conventional way. Maybe. Free enterprise. A lot of conservatives do like that capitalism. Let's see what the next one is. Viewpoint B. We're willing to change. We're flexible. We're open-minded. We're liberal. Conservative. Liberal. What's another word for liberal? Progressive. Ba, ba, ba. Now you're sitting there saying, Mr. McBride, A, you didn't pause it, so you didn't give me a chance to get it wrong. And B, these questions are really easy. Yes, they are. But these are still diploma questions. And if you go through them slowly, and you've done your work before, and you do your work during, you're going to get a lot more right than you do wrong. Number 10. Which of the following 20th century ideological viewpoints are contrasted in these diagrams? What? Well, we already answered that. I'm sorry. We already answered that when we did 9, when I said that's conservative and liberal. Oops. I was working too efficiently. All right. Questions 11 to 15. Citizens. We might have to save this one for our political unit. I see Karl Marx. We might be able to do number 16 right now. So, number 16. Which shared principle accurately completes the diagram? I'm going to go and look at the shared principle. You got my interest. So, something that Marxism and capitalism shares. That's all it's asking. Like all of this is Marxism. This is capitalism. What is something that they share? Well, the word or the little ending thing ism, but it can't be that easy, can it? Which shared principle? It's a principle. Principles, page 71 to 85 of the textbook. Which shared principle accurately completes the diagram? Elimination of class divisions. Capitalists do what now? I don't think capitalists eliminate class divisions. I think capitalism sometimes has been criticized for actually exaggerating them. Greater economic prosperity for society. Is that something they're both trying to achieve? Now, Stalin could, or, Mao, no. Lenin, okay, a communist leader, like a real one, like a guy that's reading Karl Marx and really believes in the true Marxism, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Are they trying to create economic prosperity for society? Sure they are. What about Adam Smith? Is he trying to create economic prosperity for society? Yeah, the argument is that the invisible hand can create broad-based prosperity. B's your answer. Nationalization, that's more of a left-wing thing. Production improvements through competition. Competition is a right-wing thing. Cooperation is a left-wing thing. So the only thing that they agree upon is that there's scarce resources and that they have a plan to create greater prosperity, but the difference is that they have different plans. But they both say they have a plan for greater prosperity. B's your answer. Wouldn't that be a good, easy question? Electoral stuff will wait. Gun stuff will wait. Okay, so this sure looks economic. For some reason, I can figure that out. And it also looks like a question that I put on your guys' midterm, because I just played around with it and created a chart, and this is actually the question you guys did best on, probably because I had a solid question to build it from. Which country's economic policies are most consistent with the principles of modern democratic socialism? So I'm going to pause. I'm going to think, okay, what does modern democratic socialism look like? Modern democratic socialism, Sweden. Modern democratic socialism, Sweden, left side. So lots of government, lots of healthcare, welfare, education, that kind of stuff. High taxes. All right, let's go look at them. I'm happy now. 1, 2, 3, or 4. The state owns most, but not all. Okay, that works. The state owns all production. Nope. Private owners control most. Maybe. The state owns some. Okay, maybe. So I got rid of that one. Universal health are provided by the state with no direct. Yep. Most citizens purchase health care. Nope. Universal health is provided with the state, however, there are some. Could be, but I'm starting to lean towards this one. Extensive support is offered universally for children. Yep. State-funded social programs include other support such as child benefits is provided on the basis of need. So we're down to this. The government ensures agencies to ensure consumer, worker, and environmental production. Government agencies enforce regulation. Okay, so this one could be the second best option, but which one sounds more like socialism? Well, here you have the state owning most utilities, and this one the state owns some, so this one's more socialist. The difference here is this talks more of a two-tiered healthcare system. This talks about more of a universal healthcare system, so more socialist. So if I'm putting these on a spectrum, I'm putting 2 as my communist, 1 as my socialist, 4 as my mixed, and 3 as my capitalist. So I'm going to go with country 1. Dang it, I forgot to tell you to pause it again. I'm horrible at that game. The economic policies of which 2 countries demonstrate the greatest contrast in their emphasis? Well, being that I put them on the spectrum, I can already go back to the spectrum and say it was 2 and 3, 2 being communist and 3 being capitalist. So that's C. I guess I was too quick on that one. Which country's economic policies least reflect those currently in the world's leading industrial powers? Well, most industrial powers today are this. Capitalist, so the opposite of that is communist, so we'll go country 2. Man, these are easy. Which of the following statements describes an economic problem that one of the 4 countries is likely experiencing? I like this. It's a little bit of a twist. Make me think a little bit. A little less straightforward it is. Let's take a peek at number 25. This might be the last one we can do, because this says the word dictatorship. Looks a little political. Which of the following statements describes the economic system? Country 1, most highly educated people are emigrating to other countries. Sweden, smart people leaving, brain drain, maybe. I mean, I'd love to live in Sweden. But, I mean, if there's more opportunity in a capitalist country, I'm going to say maybe. We saw the brain drain in communist countries leaving. We didn't really talk about it in socialist countries, but we'll put maybe because of the same ideas. Country 2, a lack of financial incentives discourages marketplace innovations. Yeah, so take a look at let's Google it, a Soviet car, the Lada. Man, look at those. Look how amazing those Ladas look. Images of Soviet cars. So, because there's not a lot of competition, the Soviet car didn't really change too much, didn't get that innovative, and there wasn't really an opportunity. That's not a Lada. Wasn't really an opportunity to be innovative because of the lack of financial incentive. The factory wouldn't be rewarded if they're innovative, and they actually had a very strong quota that they had to meet too. So they didn't have time to be innovative, they didn't have an incentive to be innovative, and therefore the Lada is remembered as a not so great car. So I'm going to go with B and call it a day there. Now those look to be political, profit or loss, planning system. I think we could do 31, 32. But you know what? Those ones are really getting into the communist part, and we haven't done that yet. So we might call it a day there. It might be our practice multiple choice lesson 2.